The boy who spent 6 years making me feel miserable just gave me the sweetest confession. Tyler was showy and arrogant when I first met him. He was my opponent at the kids' judo tournament 6 years ago. He strutted onto the mat, grinning and waving at his friends like he'd already won. But 27 seconds I had him pinned down on the mat. All his friends laughed, shouting, "Tyler got beat up by a girl." His face turned red. It was the most embarrassing thing a 12-year-old boy could go through. So after that, Tyler made sure I never beat him again. 7th grade spelling bee. He studied the dictionary for months just to knock me out in the finals. 8th grade science fair. He built a robot that solved mazes just to beat my environmental project. Freshman debate finals. He practiced with the senior team for weeks just to destroy me in front of the whole school. And somewhere along the way, I started needing to beat him as much as he needed to beat me. I just didn't expect the competition to turn into something more. During senior year, we both decided to run for student council president the exact same day. The whole school treated it like the ultimate showdown. Except this time, I was sure I could win. We both went all out on our campaign. He hired the varsity quarterback as his campaign manager. I got the yearbook editor on my side. His posters read, "Vote for actual leadership," so mine read, "Vote for someone who shows up," taking a dig at the fact that he'd missed out on a few school events that I managed to attend. Even our debates were brutal. We knew each other's weaknesses by heart and weren't afraid to use them. Then a problem struck us. The library had closed down all conference rooms except one. "You'll just have to share, just this week," the lady told us with a kind smile. So we sat in the same room glaring at each other from across the table, throwing insults and paper airplanes at each other while we worked on our campaign for the day. But one day, I showed up extra early to the library and ended up falling asleep. I woke up with a fresh cup of coffee and his jacket around my shoulders and a note that read, "If you really want to beat me, you should sleep." I felt this warm, fuzzy feeling in my chest. It was confusing. When he showed up at the conference room in the evening, something was different. When his eyes met mine, my heart raced like I ran around the track. When he ran his hands through his hair, I couldn't help but stare. "Like what you're seeing." He teased with that same arrogance he had back when we did judo. "Says the guy who left me coffee this morning," I grinned. Soon we were sitting side by side, teasing and talking like friends instead of rivals. He started helping me with my speeches, and I caught myself wishing him good luck before his campaign events. But a few days before the election, one of the girls on his side spread horrible rumors about me, saying, "How could a girl with divorced parents run the school when she couldn't even keep her family together?" They made flyers with screenshots of my mom's Facebook posts about struggling with the separation and taped them inside bathroom stalls. They tore down posters and wrote the words "unstable" across my locker. I was devastated. At lunch, those same girls started a chant that spread through the entire cafeteria. "Drop out! Drop out!" All the kids screamed. I fought back tears, begging them to quit it, but they refused. Tyler appeared behind me and covered my face with his jacket before my tears started falling. He jumped up on a table and yelled, "You're all pathetic. She's here working hard, thinking of ways to improve the school while you're here tearing her apart? Cowards." He picked me up and carried me all the way to our conference room, setting me down gently in a chair to cry my eyes out. "Hey, you're a fighter. Don't let them get to you," he said gently, patting my head like he hadn't spent years fighting me too. "We're enemies." "Why are you being nice to me?" I asked, still sniffling. "I chased after you for 6 years, doing everything to get your attention. Why wouldn't I be nice? But let's talk about this after the elections, okay?" He leaned over and kissed my forehead before leaving to give me space. And suddenly, all the pain and humiliation I felt earlier disappeared. I should have chased after him. The day of the elections, he wasn't at school. I looked for him everywhere. Class, conference room, auditorium. I ran over to his campaign manager, who just frowned and congratulated me in advance. "Tyler didn't tell you? He withdrew his name yesterday. He's transferring to Austin with his dad. He definitely would have won today otherwise." He handed me a note that Tyler had left for me. "You deserve this win." But I didn't want to win anymore. I just wanted to see him again. And I did. In college, just last week. We picked up not where I expected. I'm sitting in my first college lecture when I see him 3 rows ahead. My chest goes tight and weird because Tyler Blackwell is supposed to be in Austin, not here in the same psychology class as me. The professor keeps talking about cognitive development or something, but I can't hear anything except the blood rushing in my ears. Tyler shifts in his seat and I duck my head down, pretending to write notes even though my pen isn't moving. The girl next to him asks him to pass back the syllabus stack, and he turns around to hand them over. Our eyes meet for the first time in over a year. I watch his whole face change, shock spreading across his features before something softer takes over, something that makes my stomach do this flipping thing I'm not ready for. He holds my gaze for 3 full seconds before the girl behind me clears her throat for the syllabus. I grab the papers with shaking hands and pass them back without looking at them. Tyler faces forward again, but I see his shoulders tense up like he's as thrown as I am. The rest of class drags on forever while I stare at the back of his head, that same dark hair he used to run his fingers through during student council prep. When the professor finally dismisses us, I grab my bag and bolt for the door before Tyler can turn around again. Walking between classes, I can't stop thinking about that judo match when we were 12. I had pinned him in 27 seconds flat, and all his friends laughed at him, shouting about how Tyler got beat up by a girl. I remember feeling so proud of myself, so powerful and strong. But now I feel this weird guilt creeping in, because I never thought about how bad that must have hurt him. He was just a kid trying to impress his friends, and I destroyed him in front of everyone. His face had turned so red that day, redder than I'd ever seen anyone's face turn. That's when it all started, when he decided he couldn't let me win ever again. I duck into the campus bookstore to avoid the crowd and pretend to browse textbooks I don't need. I remember all the times he beat me after that. 7th grade spelling bee where he knocked me out in the finals with the word accommodate, that I spelled with one man 8th grade science fair, where his maze-solving robot beat my environmental project, even though mine was about actual real-world problems. Freshman debate finals where he practiced with the senior team for weeks, just to destroy my arguments in front of the whole school. It makes me mad how much space he took up in my head for so long. 6 years of my life spent thinking about Tyler Blackwell and what he was doing and how I could beat him next time. But I also get that we pushed each other to be better. I wouldn't have studied so hard or worked so late or tried so many things if he wasn't there chasing me down. Neither of us would have worked as hard without the other person to compete against. I grab a coffee from the cart outside and head toward my dorm. That night, I lie in bed staring at my ceiling and thinking about the library room. I had shown up extra early one morning during campaign week and ended up falling asleep at the table from exhaustion. When I woke up, there was a fresh cup of coffee next to me and his jacket around my shoulders keeping me warm. The note tucked under the coffee cup said, "If you really want to beat me, you should sleep," in his messy handwriting. My chest feels warm and confused just remembering it because that was the moment everything started to shift between us. That's when I realized competition might have been his weird way of staying close to me, of making sure I never forgot about him. I pull my blanket up higher and roll onto my side. The memory of that evening when he came back to the conference room plays in my head. How my pulse raced when our eyes met. How I couldn't stop staring when he ran his hands through his hair. How sitting side by side felt different from sitting across from each other had felt. I remember the cafeteria incident so clearly it still makes me want to cry. Those girls on his campaign team spread horrible rumors about me, saying awful things about my mom's divorce and how I couldn't keep my family together. They made flyers with screenshots of my mom's Facebook posts and taped them inside bathroom stalls where everyone would see them. They wrote "unstable" across my locker in thick black marker. At lunch, they started a chant that spread through the entire cafeteria, everyone screaming for me to drop out while I stood there begging them to stop. Tyler appeared behind me right before my tears started falling and covered my face with his jacket. He jumped up on a table and called them all pathetic and cowards for tearing me apart. Then he picked me up like I weighed nothing and carried me all the way to our conference room while I tried not to sob. Even now, I can feel the safety of being held by someone who saw me falling apart and just acted without thinking about it. He set me down gently in a chair and patted my head and told me I was a fighter. The memory of his almost confession plays on repeat in my head. How he said he'd chased me for 6 years doing everything to get my attention. How he leaned over and kissed my forehead before leaving to give me space. I ache thinking about how I should have run after him right then. Should have told him I felt it too. That somewhere along the way I'd started caring about him as more than just my rival. But I was too shocked and hurt and confused to move. I just sat there in that chair crying while he walked away. Then the next day he was gone and I never got to tell him anything. I remember finding out he withdrew from the race and transferred to Austin. I had looked for him everywhere that morning, checking our conference room and the auditorium and all his usual spots. His campaign manager found me and congratulated me in advance with this sad look on his face. Tyler had withdrawn his name the day before and was transferring to Austin with his dad. He handed me a note that just said, "You deserved this win," in Tyler's handwriting. But I didn't want to win anymore. The victory felt so hollow and pointless without him there. I spent months wondering if I'd imagined the whole library room thing, if that forehead kiss meant anything to him at all, or if I'd just made it into something bigger in my head. I throw my arm over my eyes and try to sleep, but it takes forever. The next afternoon, I run into Tyler outside the student union. He's standing by the bike racks checking his phone, and I almost turn around to avoid him, but he looks up and sees me. We do this awkward small talk thing about classes and how the campus is bigger than our high school, and how the food is better. He seems careful with his words, like he's testing each sentence before he says it out loud. I'm trying so hard to sound casual when really my pulse is pounding in my throat. But there's this tiny smile on his face that gives me hope this isn't just polite stranger conversation. He asks what I'm majoring in, and I tell him undecided but maybe education. He says that makes sense because I was always good at explaining things to people. He stops me as I'm about to leave and says he's sorry for disappearing without warning. His dad got a job transfer and the custody situation was complicated, and everything happened really fast. I feel defensive at first because a text would have taken 30 seconds. But the regret in his voice is so real and genuine that I find myself actually listening instead of shutting down. He says he wanted to tell me everything that day in the conference room, but the election was so close and he didn't want to mess up my focus. Then his dad made him pack that same night and wouldn't let him come back for graduation or anything. His hands are shoved in his pockets and he won't quite meet my eyes while he talks. I tell him it sucked not knowing what happened. He nods and says he knows and he's sorry. We stand there in silence for a minute before I say, I have to get to work study. And he says, okay, and we both walk away. We both show up to the service committee interest meeting at the end of the week and realize we signed up for the same thing. I walk into the room and freeze because Tyler is already sitting there in the third row. He looks as surprised as I feel when he sees me. There's this moment of eye contact across the room that's equal parts nervous and curious. The committee coordinator starts talking about leadership opportunities and community service projects. I sit down in the back row, but I can feel Tyler glancing back at me every few minutes. When the coordinator asks us to partner up for an icebreaker activity, Tyler stands up and walks straight to my row. He asks if we can work together, and I say sure, even though my heart is racing. We end up talking about why we joined and what kind of projects we want to work on. He says he wants to do something with ethics in student government, and I almost laugh because of course he does. I tell him I'm interested in that too. The coordinator announces that next week we'll be choosing subcommittees and project partners. Tyler and I look at each other, and I can't tell if the universe is laughing at us or giving us a second chance at something we messed up the first time. The coordinator claps her hands to get our attention and starts reading off subcommittee assignments. She goes through campus outreach, event planning, budget management. Then she looks down at her clipboard and announces that Tyler and I are paired together for the Student Leadership Ethics Project. I feel my stomach drop because of all the possible assignments. This one feels like the universe is mocking us. Tyler glances over at me with this expression that's half amused, half nervous. The coordinator explains that we'll be researching ethical guidelines for student government campaigns and presenting recommendations to the administration. She has no idea that we literally lived through the worst example of campaign ethics violations just 2 years ago. After the meeting ends, everyone starts packing up their stuff and heading out. Tyler walks over to where I'm standing and pulls out his phone. He asks if we should exchange numbers for project coordination. I nod and we swap phones to type in our contact info. His phone case has a faded judo tournament sticker on it from when we were kids, and I wonder if he kept it on purpose or just never bothered to change cases. We sit back down at the table to go over the project requirements. The coordinator left us a folder with some initial research articles and a timeline. Tyler opens his notebook and starts taking notes about deadlines and deliverables. I'm doing the same thing, but I can feel this weird tension in the air, like we're both hyper-aware of each other's presence. He writes something down and I notice his handwriting is still the same messy scrawl from high school. We divide up the initial research tasks pretty quickly, and it feels surprisingly functional, like maybe we actually can work together without it turning into a competition. But then he suggests we meet twice a week to sync up, and I immediately think that's too much, that we should just email updates. I catch myself about to argue and realize I'm already falling into old patterns of disagreeing just to disagree. Tyler must notice something on my face because he asks if twice a week is too much. I admit that I was about to push back just out of habit, and he laughs this short, relieved laugh. He says he's been doing the same thing, catching himself wanting to one-up every suggestion I make. We sit there for a minute just looking at each other, and it's strange how aware we both are of our own behavior. Tyler suggests we set a ground rule where either of us can call out competitive spirals if they start happening. I'm surprised he's thinking about this too, that he wants to actively work against our old patterns. I agree, but tell him I'm not sure we can actually change 6 years of behavior just by deciding to. He nods and says he knows it won't be easy, but maybe we're both mature enough now to at least try. There's something hopeful in his voice that makes me want to believe him. We pack up our stuff and walk out of the building together. The campus is pretty empty since it's getting late. Tyler heads toward the north dorms and I go toward the bus stop. I keep thinking about his suggestion, about whether we really can work together without falling back into rivalry mode. That night, I'm lying in bed scrolling through my phone when I get a text from Tyler. It's almost 11 and I'm surprised to see his name pop up. The message says he noticed himself falling into old patterns during our planning session, getting that competitive edge in his voice when we were dividing up tasks. He writes that he's going to work on it and hopes I'll call him out if he slips. I read the text 3 times because it's so honest and self-aware. Most people wouldn't admit they're struggling with something like this, especially not to someone they used to compete with. I text back that I appreciate him saying that and I'll work on it too. His reply comes fast, just a thumbs up emoji, but somehow it feels like we made some kind of agreement. I set my phone down and stare at the ceiling. Something in me softens reading his message. Makes me think maybe we really can do this differently. Maybe we're not the same people we were in high school. Over the weekend, I keep thinking about the project and about Tyler. I'm home doing laundry and catching up on other homework, but my mind keeps wandering back to that text. I decide I'm going to give this partnership a real chance instead of keeping my guard up the whole time. We're not in high school anymore, and maybe we can figure out how to be in each other's lives without everything being a competition. I make a mental list of things I need to work on, like not immediately contradicting his ideas just because they're his ideas. It sounds simple, but I know it's going to be hard to break that habit. Monday afternoon, I text him asking when he wants to meet for our first real work session. He suggests Wednesday at the library, and I agree. Wednesday comes, and I get to the library early to claim a study room. Tyler shows up right on time carrying his laptop and a coffee. We spread out our research and start going through what we each found. Things are going pretty smoothly until we get to the presentation format. I think we should do an interactive workshop style where we engage the audience with scenarios. Tyler thinks we should do a traditional presentation with slides and data. I can feel myself getting defensive, that old competitive edge creeping into my voice as I explain why my idea is better. He's doing the same thing, his tone getting sharper as he lists reasons why his approach makes more sense. Then suddenly Tyler stops mid-sentence and says we're doing it again. We both go quiet, and then laugh this nervous, embarrassed laugh. He suggests we take a breath and actually talk through the options like adults, instead of just trying to win the argument. I nod, and we spend the next 20 minutes genuinely discussing the pros and cons of each approach. We end up combining both ideas into something that's actually better than either of our original plans. Walking out of the library, I feel this small sense of victory. Not because I won, but because we managed to catch ourselves and choose differently. Thursday afternoon, Tyler texts asking if I want to grab coffee and work on the ethics case studies. I meet him at the campus coffee shop, and we find a table in the corner. We're going through different examples of campaign violations when a girl from our old high school walks up to our table. She recognizes both of us immediately and starts talking about how wild it is that we're both here. Then she mentions the viral rumor thread about our election drama, asking if we ever sorted all that out. I feel my face go hot with embarrassment. Tyler handles it smoothly, saying that was years ago and we're working together now on a committee project. The girl nods and says that's cool, then mentions she has to get to class. After she leaves, we sit in uncomfortable silence. I'm staring at my laptop screen but not really seeing it. Tyler asks quietly if I'm okay, and I nod, but don't trust myself to say anything else. We try to keep working, but the energy has shifted and everything feels awkward now. That night, I'm scrolling through social media before bed when I see it. Someone has posted screenshots from the old rumor thread on a college gossip page. I click through and my stomach turns. There are the flyers about my mom's divorce, the comments calling me unstable, the whole cafeteria incident. Some of the cruel stuff about my mom's Facebook posts is right there for everyone to see again. I feel that old shame creeping back, that sick feeling of being exposed and vulnerable. But then I get angry. I'm not that scared high school senior anymore. I screenshot everything and save it to a folder. This time I'm going to control the narrative instead of letting it control me. I close the app and try to sleep, but my mind is racing with what I should do next. My phone buzzes around 9 the next morning. It's Tyler asking if I saw the posts. I text back that I did. He responds immediately saying he wants to help, that he can contact Ross, who's apparently good with social media, and might be able to get the posts removed. I stare at the message for a long time. Ross was Tyler's campaign manager, part of the group that let those girls tear me apart. I'm not sure I trust anyone from that crew. But Tyler is offering to help instead of pretending this isn't happening, and that means something. I text back that I appreciate it, but I'm not sure about involving Ross. Tyler replies saying he understands and that Ross has actually changed a lot, but he'll respect whatever I decide. I tell him I'll think about it. Later that afternoon, I'm checking my email between classes when I see a message from Heather Mooney. She was our student council advisor senior year. The subject line says, "Saw the posts, want to help." I open it and read that she heard about the resurfaced rumors and wants me to know that she documented the original ethics violations when they happened. She still has records of the complaints filed, the witness statements, everything. She offers to provide proof of what actually happened if I need it for any kind of response. Having an adult witness validate that those girls were wrong makes me feel less alone in this. I email her back thanking her and asking if we can set up a call to discuss options. She replies within minutes saying she's available whenever I need her. That evening, I call my mom to warn her that the divorce stuff is circulating again. She answers on the second ring and I can hear the TV in the background. I explain what happened with the screenshots resurfacing and brace myself for her reaction. But instead of getting upset, she asks how I'm doing with it. We end up talking for almost an hour about how hard that time was for both of us. She tells me she felt so guilty that her personal struggles became ammunition against me. I tell her it wasn't her fault, that those girls would have found something else to attack if it wasn't the divorce. My mom says she's proud of how I handled it back then, and how I'm handling it now. Her voice is steady and sure, not the shaky, uncertain voice I remember from senior year. After we hang up, I feel my foundation getting steadier, like I'm standing on solid ground instead of constantly trying to keep my balance. The next morning, I text Tyler asking if he wants to meet for coffee to talk about everything. He responds within minutes saying yes and suggests the campus coffee shop at 2. I show up early and grab a corner table away from the main crowd. When he walks in, I notice he looks tired, like he didn't sleep much either. He orders a black coffee and sits across from me, wrapping both hands around the cup. I wait for him to start talking because I can tell he has something to say. He takes a breath and explains that his parents' custody battle got really ugly right before senior year, that his dad basically forced him to move to Austin because the court gave his dad primary custody. Tyler says he was so burned out from trying to be perfect at everything that he didn't have the energy to fight the move. He tells me his dad kept saying the transfer would be good for him, a fresh start away from all the pressure. I feel my anger toward him shifting into something softer because I get what it's like when your parents' problems take over your whole life. He apologizes again for not reaching out, says he convinced himself I was better off without him complicating things. I tell him I wish he'd let me decide that for myself, but I understand why he didn't. We sit in silence for a moment, and it's not uncomfortable, just heavy with everything we're both carrying. Later that afternoon, I meet Ariana back at our dorm and tell her about the coffee shop conversation. She listens without interrupting and then offers to help me draft a statement about the rumor history if I want to post something publicly. Having her support reminds me I'm not the same scared high school senior anymore. I'm stronger now, and I have people who actually care about me. Ariana pulls out her laptop and we start outlining what I might want to say, focusing on facts rather than emotions. She helps me find words that feel true without making me sound like a victim. We work on it for over an hour until we have something I'm actually proud of. The next week, Tyler and I run our first tabling event for the committee in the student union. We set up the table with flyers and sign-up sheets and spend 3 hours talking to students about leadership ethics. It goes way smoother than I expected. We take turns answering questions, and I notice how easily we hand off to each other, like we've been doing this together for years. Afterward, as we're packing up the materials, Tyler says working with me felt natural and good. There's pride in his voice that's not about beating me, but about what we built together. I feel the same way and tell him so. A few days later, we both get an email inviting us to speak on a campus panel about ethics in student campaigns. My stomach drops when I read it because public speaking after everything that happened still makes me nervous. Tyler texts asking if I saw the invitation and whether I want to do it. He says we don't have to if I'm not comfortable. I think about it for a long time, sitting on my bed staring at the email. Hiding hasn't helped me heal from what happened. I text back that I want to do it. We schedule a prep session in the library for the following Tuesday. When we meet up to prepare, I bring my notes about personal experiences, and he brings a structured outline with talking points. We quickly realize we have totally different speaking styles, and it creates some tension. He's more polished and formal, while I'm more personal and story-based. We spend 20 minutes arguing about the best approach until I suggest we stop trying to make each other change. Maybe his polish and my personal touch actually complement each other. We restructure our presentation to let each person play to their strengths, and suddenly everything clicks. Together, we cover more ground than either of us would alone. The panel happens on a Thursday evening in one of the bigger lecture halls. About 50 students show up, which is more than I expected. The moderator asks us questions about campaign ethics and student leadership. Everything goes fine until someone asks how to handle public criticism and personal attacks. I feel my throat tighten and my mind goes blank. Tyler notices me freezing up and pauses his answer, taking a long sip of water to give me a moment. The moderator picks up on the pause and moves to the next question. Afterward, I'm grateful he didn't try to save me by jumping in completely, but also didn't let me drown. That night, we're walking back from the lecture hall, and I tell Tyler I need us to slow down the pace of committee stuff, because I'm feeling overwhelmed. It's the first time I've set a clear boundary with him about anything. He listens without getting defensive or trying to talk me out of it. He just nods and says we can adjust the timeline however I need. That response makes me feel respected in a way I didn't expect from him. The next afternoon, I'm leaving my psychology class when I see Ross waiting outside the building, Tyler's old campaign manager from high school. My first instinct is to walk past him, but he steps forward and asks if we can talk. He apologizes in person for the cafeteria culture and for not stopping those girls when he should have. I'm guarded at first because apologies are easy, and I've heard plenty of them. But Ross seems genuinely sorry and asks what he can do to make it right. I tell him if he really wants to help, he should work with our old high school to create actual consequences for that kind of bullying. He agrees immediately and says he'll reach out to the administration about setting up better policies. Hearing him commit to action instead of just saying sorry makes me feel like I'm finally getting some control over what happened instead of just being a victim of it. 3 days before our big committee event, our key vendor emails to cancel. Apparently, they double-booked and have to honor the contract they signed first. Tyler and I meet up in the library that evening and go straight into problem-solving mode. We're both stressed, but we're not competing about who has better ideas. I suggest reaching out to the student activities office for their vendor list. He adds that we should check if any student organizations have contacts we could use. We split up the task list and start making calls. By midnight, we found a replacement vendor who can deliver what we need in time. Sitting there exhausted but successful, I realize this is what partnership actually feels like. We keep searching through contact lists and making calls until my phone dies, and Tyler lends me his charger. The library gets quieter as other students pack up and leave until it's just us and the night janitor vacuuming in the distance. Around 1:30, we finally lock down a backup vendor who can deliver everything we need by Friday morning. I slump back against the couch cushions, feeling the exhaustion hit me all at once. Tyler sits down next to me instead of across the table like he usually does. Our shoulders touch and neither of us moves away. He turns to say something about the delivery schedule, and suddenly his face is only a few inches from mine. I can see the little gold flecks in his brown eyes and the way his breath catches. The air between us feels thick and warm. We both start leaning in at the same time, slow and careful like we're testing something fragile. Then we both pull back at the exact same moment. Tyler clears his throat and shifts slightly away. He says maybe we should figure out the friendship part before we make things complicated. I nod and say I agree, even though disappointment sits heavy in my chest. We pack up our stuff in awkward silence and he walks me back to my dorm. The next morning, Tyler texts asking if we can meet for coffee. I show up at the campus cafe and find him already there with 2 cups waiting. He slides one across to me and starts talking before I can even sit down. He explains that the note he left before transferring was supposed to be the beginning of a conversation, not goodbye. He thought his dad would let him come back for graduation, and he could tell me everything then about why he had to leave and what he felt. His dad refused to let him return, and by the time summer ended, it felt too late to reach out. I stir sugar into my coffee and admit that I didn't want to win the election without him there. The whole thing felt empty and pointless. Tyler looks surprised and says he always assumed I was relieved to have him gone, that I could finally be student council president without him in the way. I realize we've both been carrying wrong ideas about what the other person felt for over a year. We sit there for a while just processing that. A few days later, we meet up in the student union and spend the whole afternoon drafting what we jokingly call a collaboration pact. We write down how we'll handle competitive triggers when they come up and what to do when we have communication problems. It feels a little silly writing it all out like a contract, but also good, like we're taking control of our patterns instead of letting them control us. Tyler adds a section about checking in weekly, and I add one about being honest when something bothers us instead of letting it build up. We both sign it at the bottom with ridiculous formal signatures that make us laugh. The following week, we have a meeting scheduled with Heather Mooney at a coffee shop near campus. She's the advisor from our high school who witnessed everything that happened during the election. We want her help drafting a model ethics code that schools could actually use for student campaigns. She shows up with a folder full of notes and documentation from that year. We spend 2 hours going through what went wrong and what policies could have prevented it. Heather keeps saying how impressed she is with our ideas, that our experience gives us credibility that adult administrators don't have. She tells us she'll take our draft to the district board and push for adoption. Turning something so painful into something useful feels good in a way I didn't expect. That night, I sit down at my laptop and start writing a personal essay about growing up with divorced parents. I write about learning that family problems don't disqualify you from leadership, that struggling doesn't make you unstable or unworthy. My hands shake a little as I type because being this open and vulnerable in public scares me. I read through it 3 times before hitting publish on the student blog platform. I feel proud of myself for owning my story instead of hiding from it. The essay goes live on a Thursday morning, and by afternoon, the comment section fills up. Lots of people write supportive messages saying they needed to hear this, or thanking me for being brave. Some people say I'm playing the victim card or using my past to get sympathy. A few comments are just mean for no reason. The criticism stings, but I'm more grounded now than I was in high school. I remind myself I wrote it for the people who needed to hear it, not for everyone. 2 days later, Tyler texts me asking if we can talk. He sounds stressed, so I meet him at the library. He tells me he got offered an internship with a local nonprofit that does youth advocacy work. It's a great opportunity, but the schedule conflicts with our committee event timeline. I feel disappointed crash over me because I was counting on him being there for the actual event. Tyler looks torn, keeps running his hand through his hair the way he does when he's anxious. I can see him falling into old patterns of trying to do everything perfectly, trying to be in 2 places at once. We spend the next hour renegotiating our roles for the event. I'll take the lead on the actual event day while he handles all the behind-the-scenes outreach and follow-up work. It's not the original plan, but it actually plays to our strengths better. I feel confident I can handle the leadership without him physically there. Tyler seems relieved that I'm not mad at him for taking the internship. Later that week, I'm walking back from class with Ariana, and she can tell I'm stressed about the event. She stops me outside our dorm building and says it's okay if the event isn't perfect. She tells me I'm putting too much pressure on myself to prove something. Her giving me permission to be enough, to not have to be the best at everything every single time, hits different from it would have a few months ago. I actually hear what she's saying instead of just brushing it off. The event day arrives 3 weeks later, and I wake up to an email from the speaker saying she caught the flu and can't make it. My hands shake as I forward the message to the committee coordinator, who calls me immediately and asks what I want to do. I tell her I need 20 minutes to think, and I pace around my dorm room trying to figure out how to salvage this without Tyler here to help brainstorm. Then it hits me that we already have 4 student leaders confirmed as attendees, so I text them asking if they'd be willing to do an impromptu panel discussion instead of listening to a lecture. All 4 agree within 10 minutes, and I feel my confidence building because this might actually work better than the original plan. I spend the next 2 hours reorganizing the entire event format, printing new name cards, rearranging chairs into a panel setup, and writing discussion questions that will get the conversation flowing naturally. By the time people start arriving, I'm sweating, but I'm also weirdly calm because I know I can handle this. The panel starts and I moderate the discussion, asking questions about ethical decision-making and accountability in student organizations. The panelists share real stories from their own leadership experiences, and the audience asks thoughtful follow-up questions that keep the energy high. I glance at my phone during a bathroom break and see Tyler texted good luck 3 hours ago, but nothing since then. The closing remarks come, and I thank everyone for adapting to the last-minute changes and for engaging so authentically with difficult topics. People clap, and several students come up afterward to tell me the panel format was more useful than a lecture would have been. I feel proud, but also a little hollow because Tyler isn't here to see how well it went. I pack up the chairs and name cards alone, checking my phone every few minutes for a message that doesn't come. I I'm walking back to my dorm when my phone buzzes with a long text from Tyler apologizing for missing the whole thing. He explains that his internship supervisor gave him a deadline extension, but only until midnight tonight, so he had to choose between being there in person or finishing the project. Then he sends 3 screenshots showing emails he sent to campus organizations promoting our event, posts he made in student leadership groups, and a detailed recap he wrote for the committee newsletter, highlighting what we accomplished. I sit down on a bench outside my building and read through everything twice. He supported the work the whole time, just not in the way I expected him to. I text back saying I understand, and that the event went really well, and he responds immediately asking if we can meet tomorrow to debrief properly. 2 days later, we grab coffee at the student union and sit in a quiet corner booth. I tell him I felt let down when he wasn't there for the closing remarks, that I wanted him to see me handle the crisis and succeed. He listens without interrupting and then admits he struggles with feeling like he has to be physically present to prove he cares, that he's learning his support can look different from he thought. We talk about how to communicate better when scheduling conflicts happen, what each of us needs to feel valued in this partnership. It's not a fight or even tense, just honest. He says he needs me to trust that he's working behind the scenes even when I can't see it. I say I need him to check in more during big events so I don't feel abandoned. We both leave feeling like we understand each other better than we did an hour ago. The following week, I get an email from Ross asking if Tyler and I would meet him for lunch. We show up at the campus cafe, and Ross explains that he's been thinking about the work we did on the ethics code and wants to start a permanent campus group focused on student leadership accountability. He says he'd like Tyler and me to co-found it with him because our experience gives us credibility that matters. I'm cautious at first because starting something new sounds like a lot of work, but Tyler seems excited about building something that could create lasting change. We tell Ross we need to think about it, and he gives us a draft proposal to review. That night, Tyler and I sit in the library going through Ross's ideas and adding our own thoughts. We realize this could actually make a difference, that we could create something neither of us could build alone. By midnight, we've decided to say yes. We spend the next week meeting with Ross to draft a charter for the ethics group. We focus on accountability and education instead of punishment, creating a framework where students can learn from mistakes rather than just getting disciplined for them. Tyler writes the section on transparent campaign practices, and I handle the part about supporting students from difficult family situations. Ross contributes ideas about peer mentorship and restorative justice approaches. The charter starts to feel like something real, something that reflects all our values. I love that we're creating this together, that our different strengths are making it stronger. On Friday afternoon, I check my email between classes and see a message from Heather. The subject line says policy update, and when I open it, my breath catches. She writes that our old high school adopted a student campaign conduct policy based on the model we created, and she attached a summary of the new rules. There are specific guidelines about rumor spreading, requirements for campaign manager accountability, and protections for students whose family situations might be used against them. It's closure without being triumphant, just quiet satisfaction that maybe other students won't go through what we did. I forward the email to Tyler with a simple, "We did something good," and he responds with a thumbs up emoji. The next morning, Heather sends another email with an attachment. One of the girls who participated in the cafeteria incident wrote a formal apology and asked Heather to pass it along to me. I open the document and read through 2 pages of her explaining that she was insecure and following the crowd, that she spent years feeling guilty about what she did. She writes that she understands if I can't forgive her, but she wanted me to know she's sorry. I sit with complicated feelings for a long time. I appreciate that she took accountability, and I believe her regret is real, but I'm not ready to forgive completely. I realize that's okay. That healing doesn't mean I have to absolve everyone who hurt me. I save the letter without responding and tell myself maybe someday I'll be ready to reply. Tyler and I meet for our weekly coffee date, and he mentions casually that he's been talking more with his dad since the move. There's something careful in his voice, like he's testing whether I want to hear about this. I ask how it's going, and he says it's slow, that they're working through a lot of old stuff about the divorce and the custody situation. He sounds hopeful but also realistic, like he knows this will take time. I tell him I'm glad he's trying to repair that relationship, that family healing is messy and ongoing. He reaches across the table and squeezes my hand, and we sit there for a minute not needing to say anything else. That evening, we're walking back from the library when Tyler stops on the sidewalk and turns to face me. He says he thinks we should try dating for real, not just as friends who have feelings, but as people intentionally building a relationship. I feel warmth spread through my chest because I've been wanting this but wasn't sure if he was ready. We talk about taking it slow, about building a healthy foundation instead of rushing into something intense. We acknowledge that we have years of complicated history, and we need to be careful not to fall back into old competitive patterns. It feels cautious and warm and right, like we're finally on the same page after years of miscommunication. We spend the next hour sitting on a bench outside my dorm talking about what we want this to look like. Tyler brings up something that's been on his mind, that we need a plan for what happens if we're ever competing for the same position or opportunity again. I feel anxiety spike at the thought because that's where everything went wrong before. We decide together that if it happens, we'll either co-sponsor the thing or one of us will step aside after an honest discussion about who wants it more and who's better suited for it. Having that boundary clearly defined removes so much fear. I feel secure knowing we won't repeat the patterns that hurt us both, that we're choosing partnership over rivalry this time. That Friday night, we go to a small Italian place off campus where nobody knows us. We order pasta and garlic bread and spend the first 10 minutes just sitting there grinning at each other like idiots. He brings up the judo tournament and does this dramatic reenactment of how he strutted onto the mat thinking he'd already won. I laugh so hard I almost choke on my water. He counts down from 27 and pretends to fall over when he hits 0, and the couple at the next table gives us weird looks, but we don't care. We walk around campus after dinner and everything feels easy, like we're finally allowed to just enjoy each other without all the weight of our history crushing us. He reaches for my hand and I let him take it, and we walk past the library where we used to compete, and it doesn't hurt anymore. It just feels like a story we can finally laugh about instead of something that defines who we are. On Monday morning, I wake up to 17 notifications on my phone. Someone dug up the old rumor thread from high school and posted screenshots on the college forum with a caption asking if I'm the same person who had that messy campaign drama. My stomach drops, but then I remember I'm not that scared senior anymore. I text Tyler and he responds in under a minute saying he already saw it. We meet at the coffee shop and draft a response together on his laptop. We keep it short and factual. Just a link to the new ethics policy our old high school adopted, and a link to my essay about growing up with divorced parents. We don't defend ourselves or get emotional, we just redirect people to the actual work we've done. He posts it from his account, and I share it from mine, and then we close our laptops and order breakfast. I feel frustrated that this keeps coming back, but I also feel powerful because we're handling it together and we're not hiding. My mom texts me that afternoon asking if we can do a counseling session together. I'm surprised because she's never suggested therapy before, but I agree immediately. We meet at the campus health center on Wednesday evening and sit in these uncomfortable blue chairs across from a therapist named Dr. Brown. The session is awkward at first because neither of us knows how to start, but Dr. Brown asks us questions about how we communicate and what we need from each other. My mom admits she didn't realize how much the public Facebook posts hurt me during the divorce, that she was so focused on her own pain she didn't think about mine. I tell her I felt like I had to be perfect to make up for the family falling apart, and that pressure made everything worse. We both cry a little and Dr. Brown gives us tissues and helps us set some boundaries about what we'll share publicly going forward. By the end of the hour, we're holding hands and making plans to do this monthly. It's not perfect, and we still have a lot to work through, but it's a start, and that feels like enough. Tyler and I spend the next week working on a guide for next year's committee members. We sit in the library conference room where we used to fight during the campaign, and now we're creating something together that might actually help other students avoid the mistakes we made. We outline the planning process for events, list the vendors that worked well and the ones to avoid, write up tips for handling conflicts within the group. He's good at organizing information, and I'm good at making it sound friendly and accessible, so we split the work that way. We finish the 12-page document on Friday afternoon and email it to the committee coordinator, and she responds right away saying it's exactly what they needed. I feel proud sitting there next to him, knowing we built something useful that will outlive our time on the committee. Saturday night, the committee throws a small party at someone's apartment to celebrate finishing the semester. There are maybe 15 people crammed into the tiny living room, and everyone brings snacks and drinks. People keep coming up to Tyler and me saying they're glad we joined the group, that we brought good energy and solid ideas. One girl mentions she read my essay, and it helped her think differently about her own family stuff, and I have to excuse myself to the bathroom, because I'm tearing up. When I come back, Tyler is talking to 3 people about the ethics workshop we're planning, and he looks so animated and happy. I stand in the doorway watching him for a minute and realize I finally feel like I belong somewhere. These people know my messy history and they value me anyway, and that feeling of acceptance is something I never had in high school. On our walk home, Tyler stops on the sidewalk and turns to face me. He tells me he enrolled in campus counseling to work through his competitiveness and insecurity, that he had his first appointment this week. I'm stunned because that's a huge step and I didn't expect him to do it so soon. He explains that he realized during our committee work how often he still defaults to trying to be the best, instead of just being present, and he wants to change that pattern before it hurts us. I reach up and hug him right there on the street, and I feel this wave of hope wash over me. He's not just saying he'll change, he's actively doing the work, and that makes me believe we might actually build something healthy together. I spend Sunday afternoon working on an application for a campus leadership role in student government. The application asks for a personal statement about my leadership experience, and I decide to write openly about the high school campaign and the bullying and how it shaped my approach to ethics and accountability. My hands shake a little as I type out the story, but I also feel steady and sure. Writing about my growth feels powerful instead of shameful, like I'm reclaiming my narrative instead of hiding from it. I submit the application Monday morning and then close my laptop and breathe, and I'm nervous, but I'm also proud of myself for being honest. That Wednesday, Tyler suggests we start doing a weekly walk where we check in about our relationship and talk through any concerns before they become problems. He calls it our State of Us walk, and I love that he's thinking ahead like this. We pick Wednesday evenings and decide to do a loop around campus that takes about 30 minutes. On our first walk, we talk about how we're both still learning to communicate directly instead of competing, and we agree to keep calling each other out gently when we slip into old patterns. It feels intimate and grounded, like we're building something real and sustainable instead of just riding the excitement of being together. We pass other couples walking and holding hands, and I think about how we look just like them now, but we had to work so much harder to get here. Friday afternoon, we co-host our first workshop on ethical leadership with the new campus group Ross helped us start. About 30 students show up and fill the classroom, and Tyler and I take turns presenting different scenarios and leading discussions about accountability and campaign conduct. The students are engaged and asking good questions, and I watch Tyler handle a tough question about social media bullying with so much thoughtfulness and care. We work together seamlessly, building on each other's points and making eye contact across the room when someone says something particularly insightful. I feel quietly proud standing up there with him, and I can see how far we've both come from those kids who needed to beat each other at everything just to feel worthy. After the workshop, we walk back toward my dorm through the cold evening air. Tyler stops under a streetlight and turns to me and says he thinks we're better together than we ever were competing. I agree completely and tell him so, and he pulls me close and I rest my head against his chest. We're still ambitious and driven, still push each other to grow and do better work, but now it comes from support instead of rivalry. Standing there with his hand in mine, I feel content with how imperfect and real and good this is. We're not perfect people, and this isn't a perfect relationship, but we're choosing each other every day and doing the work to build something healthy. His arm tightens around me, and I close my eyes and breathe in the moment, and I think about that 12-year-old girl who pinned him in 27 seconds and had no idea where it would lead. I'm grateful for every messy, complicated step that brought us here. That's where we'll close things for today. I'm honestly so glad you were here. Sharing these stories with you always feels special. I hope this one left your heart a little lighter. Subscribe if you'd like to come back for the next good story.